Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we've got another children's toy. Well, it's a little chilly in the shop this morning. I'm just waiting for the heat to come up from the wood stove, but we've got a great project today. It's a little odd and there's a lot to cover, so I don't want to mess around too much with the intro. Let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what I've got in mind so far. Well, what we're going to make today is a retro telephone for a child to play with. And normally when I have a child's toy, I have a pattern all ready to go, and the show is my test model. However, I just can't wrap my head around this one, and I don't know why. So all I've got so far is the rotary dial and possibly the side profile of my phone. And what I'm going to end up doing with this, because I can't wrap my head around the different views and that sort of thing for some reason, I'm going to reverse engineer this. So I'm going to make these two parts here, and then we're going to build the rest around. And I'm going to make the pattern according to the project. A little different. It's not what I normally do, but it will still work. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start with this dial, and this dial, or the rotary on the telephone toy, is made at a 1/4 inch thick stock. So very first thing is you want to get this pattern here, attach it to your wood, and you can drill all of the holes. This outer section can be cut on the bandsaw or the scroll saw. These are all 1/2 inch holes here, and our center hole right there is a 1/4 inch in diameter. So we can get this one piece made, and I'll show you where to go from there. Now, I didn't have any 1/4 inch thick material, so I'm making this out of 5/16 inch thick scrap. And alternatively to gluing your pattern on here, I use a combination of Lightburn and Inkscape to make these patterns. So I already had a laser engraving of this pattern, so I've just laser engraved it on here. So let's get this outer perimeter cut and sanded, the 1/4 inch hole drilled in the middle, and the 1/2 inch holes drilled around the perimeter. And you end up with something like this. Now what I've done is I have put a 1/8 round over all the way around on both sides. And as well, I've used my thumb and some sandpaper to get in here and round off and break those corners in all of these finger holes, because those little fingers are going to be in there to dial their pretend numbers, and you don't want any sharp edges. So that's pretty much the dial completed. But now we need the face of the phone. So what I have here is a scrap of pine, and in the middle I've drilled a hole. It is 3/4 of an inch thick. It's 5.5 inches wide, and the surface area here that you can see, this actually measures 5 13/16 of an inch. But both ends, you can see the bevels here, both ends are cut to 13 degrees, and that will be reflected on the pattern, of course. Well, what I've done is on Lightburn, just like I made the pattern for the dial, I've engraved the numbers here for our telephone. I've done a nice deep engraving. If you don't have an engraver, don't worry. This pattern will be on the actual PDF for this toy telephone. So you can use markers, you can use a wood burner, you can paint them on, stencil them on, you can use a Cricut machine. You can do whatever it is that you want to transfer your numbers. So this hole of the dial that I've drilled is a 1/4 inch, but to give the dial some free space to turn, this hole here is actually 9/32. So we can see that if we line up those holes, now we get ourselves a really cute little dial telephone. So our next step now, with these two pieces completed, we need to make our sides. Now for the sides, I'm actually going to use my original pattern here. So we need to cut two sides of this shape here that are 1/4 of an inch thick. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to cut them to their length and roughly their width at the table saw. The rest of this work right here, this angle and this little cutout section right here, I am going to cut those on the scroll saw just because I can. So let me get those two pieces cut. I'm going to use walnut, I think, for this, or a darker species in the pine. I want some contrast on the sides. So I'm going to see what I have for scrap in the rack and get these pieces cut. So far, if you've been following along in the retro phone build, you should have your two sides cut. You should have your faceplate cut and your dial. We now need to cut some scrap pieces of pine for the outer box of this thing that will hold it all together, essentially. So you're going to need one piece of pine, 3/4 of an inch thick. This one will be 2 3/16 of an inch wide and 5.5 inches long. You're going to need a second piece of 3/4 inch thick pine. This one's 1 7/16 of an inch wide, again 5.5 inches long. And the last piece that we're going to need will be our base, or our bottom. This as well is 3/4 of an inch thick. It is, once again, 5.5 inches wide. But this one here is 7 1/8 inches long. However, the end of it here is just a little too thick. It's going to collide with our faceplate. And you'll never see it, but what I want to do is I'm going to clamp this to the bench, and I'm going to use a block plane, and we're going to trim this down 3/4 of an inch in from the edge until we get the end of it here to be 5/8 of an inch thick. So we're kind of putting that little taper on there. It'll never be seen, it's on the inside. So let's get that tapered up. All right, and that should pretty much do it there. Now, let me show you what we're going to do. Give all your pieces a good sanding, and I'll show you how we're going to assemble this so far. Well, the very first thing that we want to do is we want to glue our dial into place. Now, we need this to be able to turn. So the very first thing we're going to do is we have a 1/4 inch diameter piece of dowel. We're going to securely glue this in the center. This is 1 3/8 of an inch long, by the way. We're going to glue it so that it's flush to our dial here. And you've seen me use these little plastic washers before. I just cut them out of plastic lids from margarine containers and that sort of thing. We're going to place 2 of them on the back of our dial. We'll place it through our 9/32 hole. We're going to take another 2 of our washers, and then I just have a piece of 5/16 inch thick scrap. This is actually left over from what I cut the dial from. And we're just going to, with this 1/4 inch hole that I've drilled in the middle, we're going to glue this in place here. And then once you get it in place, you just want to make sure that this turns freely. You don't want it binding. So once you're happy with that, you can put that aside and let it dry. Well, our next step is to glue the body of this telephone together. And we're going to take our top. Our top will get lined up so that this angled edge of the top of our dial is right in this little nook right here, and it'll get lined up flush with the top of our side piece of walnut. Our wider piece of 3/4 inch thick pine, the 2 3/16 of an inch wide, that is going to butt up against that piece just like this and be flush with this little alcove right here. And our thinner piece, the 1 7/16 inch wide, will get glued in place just like this. And finally, our last piece with our taper at the end here facing up, this will sit right in here just like that. And we can glue and clamp this together. Our other side piece, our side panel, will then get glued on top of this here, and this will all get clamped together. Now I'm probably going to end up using some brad nails or some pins to hold this all together to assist the glue while it dries. But we can get this glued together, and then we need to make just our front trim piece here. All right, and before we give this thing our final sanding, what we want to do is I'm going to take this over to the table saw, and honestly, this here is not aligned. I don't really like its alignment. I didn't expect it to align. It's very difficult to clamp something like this. So using our miter fence, I'm going to cut off this front end to make this all flush. And then I have a 1/8 inch thick piece of walnut. This is just a little tiny bit over 6 inches long and 1 3/8 of an inch wide. And we're going to glue this on the front, clamp it, and use some pin nails to hold it in place. And once we get that dried on there, we're going to give the whole thing a good sanding. We want to concentrate on leveling out anything that may be uneven. After all, this is a flat surface. This was cut with a scroll saw. There may be discrepancies. We want to take off these sharp corners and all the way across here. Soften that curve, soften these corners, this corner. We want to even everything out. And then when you're done, we can start to make the hand receiver. Well, there are 5 more pieces to make. The first one is right off of the pattern, which is just a simple 1/8 inch thick disc, which will be our center hub of our dial. And that, of course, will cover up our dowel. And I'm not going to glue mine in place just yet because I think I want to do a little custom engraving here. This one's for my granddaughter, so I don't know, maybe just a custom little thing there for her. As well, you need to make the actual receiver bracket. Now this is out of 3/8 material. It's really not that complicated. It's just follow the pattern and cut it with a scroll saw. I have put a 1/8 inch round over all the way around, and that will get glued in place right here on this shelf, right in the center. Now I haven't done the routing on these pieces yet, but I have two circles rather of 3/4 inch pine. They're 2 inches in diameter each, and they will sit right there. I'm going to put a 1/8 inch round over on both sides of each one of these discs. And as well, we have a 1/2 inch thick piece of walnut. It's 1 inch wide, 5.5 inch long, with a 1 inch diameter circle template drawn at either end. And this will become the handle. And once again, there will be a round over, in this case, again, 1/8 of an inch placed on one side of it. So once you get this all together, we can glue this handle in place. We can glue our bracket down, and once you're happy with this piece, you can glue that in place, and that will pretty much be the end of our telephone project. And there you have it, a retro rotary phone toy. Guys, this is a much less involved show than normal. There's a lot less demonstrating happening, and that's not because I didn't feel like filming it, it's because I don't really think it's necessary. Not in today's project. This project is pretty darn simple, and really the only necessary instructions were exactly how to put the thing together. The parts of this project, for the most part, are very simple cuts, mostly table saw work. Most of that interior pine frame, table saw, simple table saw cuts. The only real issues, or the only real things that were different, were the dial, really. Everything else is simple, very simple geometric shapes, very easily done. I know that I did a lot of this on the scroll saw, but if you don't have a scroll saw, a bandsaw will suffice. This is really not a rocket science project, but it is a cool one. I do like the way it looks. It's got that retro feel to it. The proportions of it are a little bit off of the originals that were used years and years ago, but I didn't want to put this thing to its original proportions, because if you remember those phones, you also remember how heavy those bricks were. And I was trying to keep this telephone as low profile as I could to keep the weight down, to prevent it from being something that could hurt the child should they drop it. I wanted to keep it light, hence it's hollow, hence most of the material is pine. A soft wood, a very lightweight wood. I didn't want this to become a brick. And that's why the proportions might seem a little off with that more shallow side profile. Either way, guys, this is a great little nostalgic project. It might bring back some memories for you guys of, having to spend, I don't know, 20 minutes dialing your friends if they had a lot of high numbers in their telephone number. But either way, it's a fun project, it's a great project, and you know what? The kids are going to love this one. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. Let me know below what you think of the project. If you haven't already, please, you consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell, and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the program. Guys, as always, every project like this that I do on the show, I offer a pattern. And while this one was done in reverse of the way I normally do it, only partial bits of the pattern were done, and then I kind of reverse engineered it. The pattern will be ready by the time this airs. So all you have to do to get that pattern is you just have to visit my website. Go to www.acutabovewoodworkings.com. You click on the free pattern section and it'll be right there. There's the photo of the finished project. There will be the PDF file to download for free. And as well, there will be today's video or the accompanying tutorial video of whatever project it is that you're downloading. So if you are interested in any of the patterns that I've offered on my channel, guys, that's where you find them. That's where you'll get them. I'm trying to get away from the email sending them out. It just becomes a little too time consuming for me when everybody is sending me emails asking for patterns. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's content. I hope you're going to try this one for yourself. But more importantly, I really hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video. Is that the phone?
We're sorry, the number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.